Shadow the Hedgehog is a game most of you are familiar with. I hope. And the 2005 classic has the unique morality system for a Sonic game. Using this system, you can get up to 10 different endings in 326 different routes. But that's a whole other story. And these 10 endings have always intrigued me quite a bit. The sad thing is we never see an aftermath to these, much less a description. And so far I haven't seen anyone go in depth with these, so let me be the first to bring you a full story on what I think the aftermaths to these endings were. Only on yours truly, TNT Sonic. God, this'll suck. So firstly, we got the evilest of endings. In this ending, Shadow states he's gonna destroy this damn planet. So obviously he's gonna blow it up. After defeating Sonic and Abraham Tower, who pilots Diabolon, he most likely kills them, and then goes super afterwards. Nobody will be ready for this, and with the power, Shadow will do it as he stated and blow up the planet. This would kill off most of the characters, including Black Doom, as he was in the gun base at the time. The only survivors would be the ones on the Black Comet, like Knuckles, Eggman, and the ones on the Ark, like the Chaotix, but he'd presumably destroy those too soon after. After this, the Edgelord will completely lose himself, if he didn't already, and go full Beerus, becoming a destroyer, roaming around the universe, destroying every planet he finds, and until the Chaos Emeralds can no longer sustain him. In this ending, Shadow betrays Black Doom and defeats him, declaring that he's going to conquer the universe. After this, Rouge will question him, as she tagged along to defeat Black Doom. All Black Arms would become inactive after this, by the way. I'm sure something would stop Shadow from getting violent with Rouge after her call-out. He would simply state his plans to her, and with the Chaos Emeralds, go super to take care of any threat that would stop him. Firstly, he'd scavenge the gun base for super weapons and destroy them. This would include Diabolon, and he may find Sonic with Diabolon. There's a possibility he killed Sonic after that, because he'd know Sonic's power. After whatever he does, he would go and destroy Eggman's Armada and other countries' weapons. After all that, he'd go to the White House of the United Federation and kill the president on international TV, before declaring his takeover of the Earth. With this, he'd overthrow all world governments and reign supreme. With Sonic most likely dead, no one would immediately stand up to him. The other main characters would regroup, including Eggman, and to make a plan to stop Shadow. Since he has permanent access to the Chaos Emeralds, the most likely solution would be for them to use the Master Emerald to neutralize him. Other options would include the use of the Time Stones, if Amy had mentioned them, but this could go two ways. Whether by bait or a clever plan, they'll successfully neutralize Shadow with the help of Knuckles, and put an end to his reign with or without Sonic. Shadow would either die or be sealed once again, but this goes on badly if Shadow finds out about the Master Emerald and destroys it or takes it. With that, Shadow would stay on Earth for a while before using the Black Arms to carefully watch Earth while he sits out on the Black Comet and conquers the rest of the universe. In this ending, Shadow defeats Sonic and Diabolon on the Black Comet, declaring his loyalty to Black Doom. Black Doom being proud to order all intruders to be killed before the Day of Reckoning could commence. Shadow would obey this, and he'd take out Sonic and Abraham Tower. After that, he'd take out the rest of the intruders, including the Gun Soldiers, Knuckles, and Eggman, who was piloting the Egg Dealer. This would happen due to their presence on the Black Comet level. The use of the Chaos Emeralds would make this an easy job, and he'd report to Black Doom afterwards. Black Doom would be pleased, and then he'd order Shadow to hand him the emeralds, and Shadow would oblige. Black Doom would use a super chaos control to teleport the Black Comet to the surface of the Earth, just like in the final story. Unlike there, the plan would happen faster, and the Chaos would be too late to broadcast Jeld's plan for Shadow. The other main characters would see what's happening, but they'd stand no chance against Shadow and Black Doom with the emeralds, and they'd all die. Without Knuckles, no Master Emerald plan could happen, but they'd probably die before doing it anyways. The only survivors would be the Chaotix, but they'd most likely get captured after the Black Arms secured the Ark. With the Day of Reckoning complete, every living thing on Earth would be rounded up and indoctrinated. Harvested for energy. The Black Arms would flourish and Earth would become a successful Black Arm colony. Black Doom, Shadow, and the rest of the Black Arms would depart for more planets to make more colonies. Shadow would prove useful in speeding up the process, and Black Doom would be impressed. Much later, if Black Doom were to die, Shadow would be crowned his successor, and the cycle would continue. Oh yeah, and Planet Wisp would be conquered, I guess. In this ending, Shadow decides to not care for Black Doom and instead go after Eggman, who was aboard the Black Comet. With the help of Knuckles, he defeats Eggman before giving a statement about how nobody can tell him what to do anymore. Knuckles would be puzzled by this, but it would pale in comparison to Shadow straight up killing Eggman. Knuckles would be horrified and call out Shadow on this, and before long the two would begin arguing. Before a fight can ensue, Black Doom would appear questioning Shadow if he was taking out intruders before handing him the Chaos Emeralds. Shadow would reply with how he was done listening to the likes of him, and Black Doom would be taken aback. He would immediately shoot a swift strike at him. This would surprise him, causing him to drop the Chaos Emeralds, and Black Doom would take them. He declared the Day of Reckoning could happen with or without Shadow, and prepare to fight Shadow. Shadow and Knuckles would make a temporary truce to fight off Black Doom, With the emeralds on the opposing side, it would seem impossible to beat Black Doom. But suddenly, a video broadcast would play. Due to Shadow postponing Black Doom's plan long enough, the Chaotix were able to send the broadcast of Gerald's true plans for Shadow. Shadow would be taken aback as memories started flashing him. He'd realize what he's done and he'd get a flash of his inhibitor rings being taken off. He'd tell Knuckles to distract Black Doom while he takes off the rings. He'd go into a Chaos Shadow mode and immediately kill Black Doom, ending all of it. Knuckles would go back to berating Shadow as before, but Shadow would take it as now he's realized what he's done. Sonic and Abraham Tower would show up praising Shadow and Knuckles for the successful defeat of Black Doom. "Good job, Shadow! You killed Black Doom! You're a murderer!" Shadow would deny this, confessing he's killed Eggman and he was the one who fired the Eclipse Cannon at Central City. They'd all be shocked as everyone was under the impression that Black Doom had fired it. Abraham would call for Shadow's immediate arrest and Knuckles would attack him. Sonic would reluctantly defend Shadow, saying Shadow just saved billions from Black Doom. But Shadow passed this off, stating that he deserves what's coming for him, but he'd rather do things on his own now. He'd give the others the 6 Chaos Emeralds and he would keep one for himself and he'd teleport out of there. The search for Shadow would ensue, whether through malicious or empathetic intent, but nothing would come out. Shadow would be missing and most likely never found. All future events besides the storybook games wouldn't happen due to Eggman's death as well. In this ending, Shadow defeats Eggman, declaring he would suppress the real Shadow as an android. He kills Eggman immediately after, and goes missing. Omega would only be able to find the dead body of Eggman. He'd return to Sonic & Co., with his life mission now complete. Shadow would be scavenging Eggman bases for every Shadow android. He'd use some computers to make them listen to all of them. He'd then start his plan for the Shadow android takeover. Soon enough, the Black Arms would be defeated and life would return to normal. Shadow's disappearance wouldn't concern many at first, until weeks had passed without him being heard of, and with the emeralds missing as well. Soon enough, Omega would confess that the last time he saw Shadow was in the lava shelter. The others would be shocked, and the search for Shadow would begin. It would be months until one day, the Egg Fleet would be spotted above Central City. The others would be confused as Eggman was confirmed dead, but soon enough, the leader would reveal himself. It was Shadow with an army of Shadow androids. Shadow, now partially a cyborg, would announce his supremacy to everyone, and the android army would be deployed. G.U.N would quickly respond with sending in an army, while Sonic & Co. would make a plan. After much struggle, Sonic would make it onto the lead ship where he confronts Shadow. He'd question why he's doing this, and Shadow would proclaim how he will surpass his former self and avenge Maria, and to do that he has to destroy every obstacle in his way. And that starts with Sonic. An all-out fight would begin, with it being even for a while, but once Sonic gained the upper hand, Shadow would reveal his ace up his sleeve, the Chaos Emeralds. He'd go super and start beating down on Sonic for several minutes on end. Then suddenly the screens and the lead ship would start playing Gerald's message. The Chaotix had intercepted the screens because convenience, and Shadow would stop pummeling Sonic. He'd look around and grab his head as a flash of memories would have consumed his head. He'd immediately call for the Shadow androids to stop, and he'd lay on the ground broken mentally. In this ending, Shadow and Omega defeat Eggman and then kill him. Shadow declares that he will now rule the world with androids, and just as in the last ending, he'd take over the Eggman Empire with a slightly different mentality. The Black Arms would be pushed back eventually while Shadow and Omega would go missing. The others would search for them with nothing coming up, not even Eggman's body. Instead, Shadow and Omega would scavenge for Eggman's central base of command so they could take over. Shadow would edit the main directory so all of Eggman's mechs would obey him. After doing this, he'd notice Metal Sonic in a tube, and get flashbacks to Sonic Heroes. Months later, the world would be at peace until a broadcast from the Eggman Central Base would play. It would be Eggman with the captured Shadow daring the Sonic Heroes to stop him. Tails would trace back the signal to an old base, and Team Sonic plus the others would go on an adventure, rather similar to that of Sonic Heroes. After a long adventure, the group would arrive at the Iron Jungle Base, where the Hyper Egg Robo from Sonic Advance 3 would be waiting, and it'd be piloted by what seems to be Eggman. He would say where Shadow is and summon thousands of robots around him. Rouge would tell the others that she's gonna get Shadow while the rest fight off Eggman. Rouge would head into the base until she found the central control room, with Shadow sitting in a chair menacingly. Rouge, confused, would ask Shadow what's going on. Shadow would state his plans of a world ruled by robots and ask her to join him. She'd deny this, and Shadow, saddened by this, would call on Omega to take care of her. Meanwhile, Sonic would get to the cockpit in no time and confront Eggman while taunting him.
My doppelganger, always so cocky.
Sonic would get confused before Eggman's arm stretches out and grabs his neck. Then he slowly transforms into the newly reborn Neo Metal Sonic. Sonic would be shocked before being thrown into the building that Rouge went into. He would see Rouge knocked out on the floor and Shadow standing above him. Sonic would know exactly what this is and without question come in to attack Shadow. Sonic would ask Shadow why he's doing this, and he'd simply state that Eggman made him as the ultimate android. He deserves to rule all and avenge his past self. Sonic would be confused by this, but he would have no time to dwell on it as Neo Metal Sonic and Shadow would double team him. Sonic would stand his own for a while, but Shadow would reveal his final weapon, the Chaos Emeralds. He'd go super stating that Sonic would be finished, and Sonic would know well enough to get out of there. Before he can, Neo Metal Sonic would punch Sonic down, and the entire base would conform around him, before Neo Metal Sonic would become Master Overlord from the IDW comics. Yep, I'm pulling from that. Yes, the whole journey to this base was merely a way for Metal and Shadow to get the Master Emerald. With that, Sonic would stand no chance and be completely pummeled by the Golden Hedgehog and the Mechanical Monster. Sonic would fall to the ground before blacking out. So now we're getting into some of the endings that actually have other game events happen. This is going to be a tricky one. In this ending, Shadow, after defeating Eggman in the Ark, would come to the conclusion that he must protect the Ark for the rest of his days, just as he states in the game. He would keep the Chaos Emeralds with him as he knows how dangerous they are. He would also banish everyone from the Ark besides Sonic and Co. Black Doom, who was on the Ark at the time, would attempt to get the Chaos Emeralds from Shadow, but he would easily defeat him and kill him. He would also fire the Eclipse Cannon onto the Black Comet as well. G.U.N would be uneasy about all of this, but ultimately respect his decision since he saved Earth. Sonic and Co. would try to convince Shadow to leave, but he'd decline. Life would move on with even Eggman attempting to raid the Ark, but barely escaping with his life. Sonic battle would happen, but Emerald wouldn't be able to function without one Emerald. Advance 3 would happen mostly the same. 06 is another story. Eggman would kidnap Elise, but she would never hand Sonic an Emerald. Rouge would escape with the Scepter of Darkness and Mephiles would be released. But since Shadow never sealed him, he wouldn't send Rouge to the future due to lack of a vendetta. Mephiles wouldn't take the form of Shadow either. Eggman would have no need to lure Sonic to White Acropolis since his time machine runs on Chaos Emeralds. Rouge would meet up with Team Sonic and she'd figure Eggman would keep Elise hostage in White Acropolis, and the four would go there and save Elise. Mephiles would send Blaze and Silver to the past, but without an Emerald, they'd only have description to go off of for Sonic. With Elise safe, Silver would travel to the castle to find Sonic, but with Tails, Knuckles, and Rouge there, plus Amy, who was a Silver at the moment, he would stand no chance to meet Dog Paladon. Blaze would have no idea where Silver was, and Mephiles would realize he'd have to take things into his own hands. He would show up to the castle and attack Sonic, but with everyone there, it wouldn't be long before Mephiles would have to retreat. Rouge would research a way to defeat Mephiles, and the only way is to seal him into something. Silver would realize that he was tricked and he would team up with Sonic and Co. He would also get Blaze to help once he finds her. They'd track Mephiles down and seal him away, but the scepter wouldn't work, as such happened in the main story, and he escaped once more. Knuckles would suggest sealing him in the Master Emerald, instead reluctantly, and after carefully setting it up, the plan would succeed, and Knuckles would return to Angel Island. Silver and Blaze would fear that they could never return to the future, but Sonic would suggest the use of the Time Stones. Silver and Blaze would leave to Little Planet as Sonic and Co. go on their next adventure. Unleash wouldn't happen due to the lack of Chaos Emeralds. Rush in the rival games wouldn't happen due to the timeline reset not happening. Chronicles is a can of worms I can't get into. Colors in the Storybook games would be the same. Generations would be similar, Shadow's memories being reverted to that of SA2 due to the Time Eater. But just as in the original timeline, Eggman would fail. Shadow, after coming to his senses, would realize he shouldn't have spared Eggman and decide to hunt him down and kill him after a short reunion at Sonic's birthday party. Sonic and Co. would protest this, but Shadow would have his mind set. As soon as Eggman escapes from the white space, he would be killed, causing all future games to cease. Shadow would return to the Ark with the Emeralds once more. I could see Metal Sonic taking over the Eggman Empire and scheme a plot up with the sealed Mephiles, but that's a whole other story. In this ending, Shadow defeats Black Doom on the Ark before stating he was a mistake and should have never been created. Vector would try and comfort Shadow, but it would come under deaf ears. Shadow would then go missing. There's also the possibility he'd seal himself up or something else, but I'll stick with this. Anyways, Vector and Black Doom would be completely shocked, and Eggman would appear from behind, killing a weakened Black Doom. He would question what happened to Shadow, and Vector would have to break the news. Vector would have to do this with everyone, and I'm sure he'd struggle with it. G.U.N would find out about this, and they'd give Shadow his own day to honor the hero who saved them from not just the Ark, but from the Black Arms as well. The main characters would mourn, but eventually things would move on. Sonic battle would be similar, as would Advance 3. 06 would start out normal until Rouge gets the Scepter of Darkness. Just as in the last ending, Mephiles would be released and leave to the future. Team Sonic would be lured to White Acropolis and sent to the future alone without Rouge. They'd fight Iblis and find 2 emeralds to travel back to the present. Rouge would meet up with them, telling them about Mephiles, and they'd keep that in mind. Silver's story would go as planned up until Radical Train, where since Shadow wasn't there to intervene, he would successfully kill Sonic, causing Elise to cry. Iblis would be released, and Silver would realize he was the Iblis trigger. Mephiles would appear thanking Silver for succeeding, and saying his death would be quick and painless as a reward. Mephiles would fire a shot at Silver, but he'd dodge it, and Mephiles would say if he wants a slow death, he'll get it. The time-space distortion would happen, bringing all the cast to Sonic, where Elise would be holding him, crying. They'd all mourn, and Silver would feel awful for being tricked. Elise would feel Sonic's presence, and Silver would suggest using the 7 emeralds to revive him. 7 of them would go out to find them, and Blaze would replace Shadow in this case. They'd succeed, and Sonic would be revived. Sonic would look at Silver, who was turning away, looking down. Sonic would tell Silver he forgave him, and he wants him to help.
Silver would accept wanting to redeem himself for falling into Mephiles' trap. He would join Sonic in the fight against Solaris, and instead of Shadow, Knuckles would go Super. They'd fight Solaris and wouldn't causing a timeline reset to happen. 06's events would be erased, and the Festival of the Sun would go off without Eggman attacking. Rush would be the same, as well as Unleashed, Colors, and the Storybook games. The rival games would be similar with some differences. Generations would be the same, but the Shadow Eggman brings in would be the past Shadow rather than the Mind Warp Shadow. This would cause some emotions, but things would work out in the end. Lost World would be consistent as well. Forces might not even happen because Infinite might not even be there, due to Shadow not breaking Infinite's confidence. Rather, the Phantom Ruby user will be a random citizen possibly, or even Metal Sonic, so forces would be rather different.
In this ending, Shadow turned into Cell Saga Vegeta, defeating Sonic and Diablon on the Black Comet, just to prove he was superior. He wanted to be the one to beat Black Doom, and he's gonna get it. Black Doom would see this, being pleased, stating he's glad Shadow has finally come to his senses. Shadow would simply reply back, stating he only defeated them so he could be the one to defeat him. Black Doom sighed in disappointment and would come in for the attack. The battle would be tense, but before the finishing blow, Black Doom would tell Shadow about his final form. Having his ego stroked, Shadow would let him transform, just like Vegeta. Shadow would go Super and fight Devil Doom. Just as in the original, he'd win. He'd then destroy the Black Comet and get offered a position in Gun. He'd decline because of his huge ego at this point. Life would move on as Sonic Battle would happen with some differences, but the same outcome. Advance 3 would be the same. Just as usual, 06 is where major changes start. Sonic would be there to save Elise when Eggman attacks, but Shadow would be there too, and with them combined, Elise wouldn't get kidnapped. They'd safely return to the castle and give chase to Eggman. Rouge would escape from Micropolis but get sent to the future by Mephiles. Sonic and Shadow would meet up with Tails and Knuckles. Eggman would send them a message about his location, and at this point, Shadow would be too egotistical to ignore this and go off without Team Sonic. Shadow would arrive at White Acropolis, where Eggman would take his emerald and send him to the future. At the same time, Silver would appear and attack Sonic, but with him clearly being outmatched, he'd retreat. Eggman would use the distraction of Silver to his advantage and kidnap Elise once again. The team would split up to find Elise. Meanwhile, Shadow would meet up with Rouge in the future and get the emeralds necessary to escape. Before they can, Mephiles would appear and taunt Shadow. Shadow would take this lightly in the fight. Rouge would head back to the past and send Omega to help him. Omega would assist Shadow, but Shadow would yell at Omega, saying he wanted to be the one to beat Mephiles. Due to this, Mephiles would escape and the duo would head back to the past. Shadow would go off to track down Eggman and the other members of Team Dark would offer to help. Shadow would decline and he'd go off. Sonic and Tails would cross paths once again while searching for Elise, and they'd rescue her from Radical Train. Silver would show up and fight them, but Shadow would intervene. Sonic would escape to find Elise and Tails would stay behind to help Shadow. This would cause an argument, but they'd realize defeating Silver comes first. Just as in the original timeline, they'd open up a time portal and go to the past. Silver and Tails would go after Iblis while Shadow would steal Mephiles. They'd then arrive in the present and Shadow would go off wanting revenge on Mephiles. Tails would join Sonic, Silver, and Blaze in Kingdom Valley. Shadow would briefly see Rouge and Omega, but once again deny their help. Rather, he would meet up with Mephiles at Wave Ocean alone, and he'd completely go off on Mephiles, beating him to an inch of his life. Mephiles would fire a laser as a last-ditch effort, and it would impale Shadow, leaving him with mere minutes to live. Rouge and Omega would arrive too late, and they'd witness their friend's death. Despite Tails being with Sonic, they wouldn't make it in time, and Elise would die in the aid carrier crash, releasing Iblis. Because Mephiles wasn't distracted with Shadow, he'd fuse with Iblis at this point instead. The time-space rift would occur, and Shadow and Elise would both be dead. They'd gather the Chaos Emeralds to revive them, and Shadow would come back realizing he needs to be able to work with others. The trio of Hedgehogs would go Super and defeat Solaris, causing the timeline reset. Shadow would relearn this lesson in Sonic Rivals, but things would end up okay. He'd be active in Sonic Unleashed, helping Sonic with restoring the Emeralds and joining him when he fights Dark Gaia. Unleashed would end up being moderately faster. Rush, the storybook games, Colors, and Generations would be the same. Shadow would join Sonic during Sonic Lost World, and due to his presence, Eggman would never lose control of the Zeti. They'd all easily get to Lava Mountain and defeat Eggman without Zavik getting in their way. Shadow would be consistent in forces up until his reappearance midway through. He'd be more active and help with the fight against the Egg Phantom rather than staying to fight with the Phantom Army. Shadow would also be more egotistical and active in the main stories, but ultimately cooled down over time. He would also have the same status as Sonic due to him being more of an independent hero. Oh yeah, and he'd keep using guns. Now we finally get to the goody good boys of endings. In this ending, Shadow and Sonic team up together and beat Black Doom on the Black Comet. Shadow would declare that Black Doom's army is finished, and Sonic would agree triumphantly. Black Doom, knowing he's outmatched, would attempt to transform into Devil Doom quickly. The duo would notice this, and Sonic would try to stop him, but Shadow would hold him back. Shadow would get cocky and tell him to transform, knowing they can defeat him. Devil Doom would completely transform, and the two Hedgehogs would go Super. The fight would be a bit challenging, but the two would be victorious. Afterwards, they'd fire the Eclipse Cannon onto the Black Comet just as in the original. The world would be saved, and the timeline would move on just as the original, with some small changes. The timeline would be the same for a while. Shadow would be a bit friendlier, and
some things would change, such as Shadow showing up to Sonic's birthday party in Generations. The biggest change would be Shadow never calling Infinite weak and forces, so that game may very well be different. Ultimately, most games would be the same, with Shadow just being a bit nicer.
Well, there you go. Scenarios for all 10 endings in Shadow the Hedgehog. Some long, others short, some similar, others different. This was a fun one to make, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Feel free to give me your thoughts down below. Thanks for watching!